Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone on here today? Let me just make sure that I am all set. Welcome, welcome, welcome to my live soap making fundamentals. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining. Let me go ahead and see if I can get you all on here live. How is everybody today? If you all can hear me, go ahead and put a comment in the video, thumbs up, whatever. I can hear you. I'm so super excited to be on here sharing great news with you all and going over fundamentals of soap making. Hopefully what we discussed today, hi Tracy, hopefully what we discussed today will be able to be beneficial to someone in their soap making business. Let me see. We're all set. So for those of you who don't know, we are in the group Soap Making for Beginners to Advance Worldwide. Thank you all so much for stopping in. If you're in different soap groups, you are more than welcome to do a watch party and share this if you're allowed to share this video, this live in other groups, because this is information that I want to share with the soaping community as a whole. Now, I will be putting this video up on my YouTube channel as well. So for those of you who may not be able to share it, if your friends or in the soaping community are not a part of this group, you're more than welcome to invite them and or have them watch on my YouTube channel, which is YorelNaturals. So once this is all uploaded to Facebook, I will put this live in the YouTube platform as well. But again, I want to thank you all so much for just coming on and, you know, just enhancing your learning with your business as far as your soaping. So as we get started, and we want to get started talking about the fundamentals of soap making, we're really going to kind of hit some Q&As that I noticed a lot of people have been asking. So hopefully these Q&As will help clarify some things for you. And in the clarification process, hopefully you'll be well versed and further on your way in your soap making journey. So let's get started, guys. I have my whole notebook over here, as y'all can see, so that I can stay on topic with you, okay? So, as we go forth, the first thing that we want to talk about is just really getting you to understand the science behind soap making. What is soap making? How does soap making come about? What is this whole thing? And when we understand the science behind the soap making, we can understand that in order for us to make soap, really and truthfully, we only need three components. And those three components are oil, lye, and water. So essentially, you can take any oil that you have and mix your oil with your lye, and you're gonna come up with soap. So that's whether we're using like butters, mango butter, shea butter, any kind of butters, hard oils, coconut oils, palm oils, anything like that, or our soft oils, our avocado oils, our olive oils, you know, any of those type oils, sunflower oils, whatever it is, you know, whether you're using a hard oil or a soft oil, along with your lye and along with your water, you're going to make soap. Okay, so with that being said, I just want to discuss a few things with you all. So when your water, when you have your soap and you have your oil and you have your lye, what activates that oil and that lye to create your soap is the activation of water or some type of other liquid, i.e. Apple cider vinegar, or if you're using like aloe vera or anything of that nature, that's going to give you a liquid component to activate your lye that will allow your lye and your oils to come together, and now you have the activation process that goes on, that when these mix up together, you have your soap, which essentially is considered a salt. And when you're adding your water, or you're activating with your water, basically what you're doing is, you guys, you're creating a lye solution. So when you create your lye solution via the activation of the water, or the activation of the apple cider vinegar, or your aloe vera, whatever you're using, this solution that you're using has the components of whatever your liquid is and your lye. When you combine these two together, that is your lye solution. Now, one thing you want to know about your lye solution is, when your liquid activates your lye, this solution gets very, very hot. When the solution gets hot, you want to make sure that you have it where your solution that is heating up is in a place where it can actually cool down for you. Okay? So whenever you're in your soap making process and you make your soap, one rule of thumb I like to do is say, okay, let me make my lye solution first. Okay, because when you're making this lye solution first, you're giving it the opportunity to cool down. And your lye solution sometimes is going to take about an hour or so to cool down to where you need it to be, because it'll get up to like 180 degrees or so, and you have to bring it all the way back down to a level of about 100 degrees, 120 degrees, 85, 95 degrees, all depending on your soap formula, which we'll kind of get into that a little more in this video. All right, so here we go, y'all. As I just told you, the main thing that you use: lye, water, and an oil. So, Curlinda, can I use any kind of oil? Yes, you can. That's why there's so many different kind of recipes out there, and so many different variations to recipes, that you don't have to get stuck in one recipe. It's not it's just one thing and that's it, cut and dry. No, the world of soaping is a constant evolution. The world of soaping is not a cookie cutter, here you go, this is how it goes. You can take different oils and plug your oils in when you know what you want to use in your soap, and you begin to understand your oils and understand the qualities of your oils. You can formulate the perfect soap for you and not even use the oils that I use. Speaking of oils, I will tell y'all, when it comes to soaping, the whole process of soaping, there are like our top three popular oils that most people use in soap making. That's our olive oil, our coconut oil, and our palm oil. Now, when it comes to our olive oil is what's going to give us a soap that's giving us a lot of moisturization. When it comes to our coconut oil in our soap is going to give us our cleansing. But you have to be careful with your coconut oil in your soap, because your coconut oil in your soap, though it's cleansing, it could also be drying to your skin. Okay, so you want to be mindful of that. And then your palm oil a lot of times is used in soap to give your soap like a good hardness to it. So that's why those are our top three popular oils. Now, do you have to use palm oil? No, because palm oil is one of those oils, depending on who you're talking to, it can be a very controversial oil. Because palm oil, people have these things, people who are especially like environmentally friendly or whatever, say, palm oil has negative effects on the environment. So when you're coming to your oils, do your homework about your oils. Can you substitute palm oil? Absolutely, you can substitute it. You can use a different type of oil. You can use a shea butter instead of your palm oil. You can use a mango butter instead of your palm oil. There are so many different oils and butters out there that you can use. Again, it's not a cookie cutter. It's not a one size fits all in the world of soaping, where you have to have yourself in a place where you can't veer off and venture off into your own wonderment of your oils whenever you're formulating your recipe. And when we're talking about our lye, guys, in our recipe, your lye comes in different forms. So you'll have your lye. Your lye will come in lye flakes. A lot of times when we purchase our lye in a like a tubular container, kind of like this. So when you purchase your lye, which is your sodium hydroxide, a lot of times when we purchase it, it looks like this. Now, let me tell y'all something about your lye, because this is one thing that I've been seeing out on the internet, and I really want to drive this home and stress this for our new soap makers. When you are using lye in your soap, is lye drain cleaner? Absolutely. But when you're using lye in your soap, you want to try at all, if at all possible, to use sodium hydroxide that is food grade, because it's formulated different, okay, than what is used for drain cleaner. In a different tool, when you're talking about your lye, sometimes when you're getting those cleaners out of the store, like I see some people doing on the internet, and I just want to take my hair and rip it out of my head, because when you're getting those lies out of the store, sometimes you have to watch and pay attention to see if there is something else added into that. Okay, because you don't want to have something that you're putting on your skin, so you want that is not skin safe. Especially if you are a person who is selling your products or giving your products to friends and family, you want to make sure that you know what you're picking up and that you're putting on not only your skin but somebody else's skin, to ensure the safety of that product that you're using. So when we're talking about our lye, you want to make your lye that again is 100% sodium hydroxide, that if at all possible it is food grade. And when you're making your soap, guys, one thing, here's a fact: you cannot make your soap without lye. I know some people, they have the question, but what about if people are allergic? People say they're allergic to lye. People say they're allergic to sodium hydroxide. Any soap that they're using has a lye component, whether it's sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide if they're using liquid soap. So with that being said, we as a soap maker, as an artisan, have to have ourselves in a position that we are able to clearly explain to that consumer that once your soap has gone through the saponification process, there is no lye left in the soap. That's what makes the soap. The reaction of the lye, the water, and the oils together, that is what makes the soap. Okay, so there is no lye left. Now, can you make soap lye heavy? Yes, and we'll go over that in a little bit. But all in all, the main thing that you need to know is your three components that you have in the beginning: your oil, your lye, and your water, or whatever liquid you use to make your lye solution. Once that soap has gone through that saponification phase, there is no lye in the soap, again, unless you make it lye heavy, which we'll go over. Now, there also another thing that I see where people ask me a lot: Curlinda, what tools do I need to make soap? Guys, when we're surfing the internet, there's so many things out there. I'm just giving y'all the fundamentals of what you need to make soap, to get yourself started, to be proficient, and know that, okay, I have my basic tools. Over time, can you evolve into other things in your soap making? Absolutely, you can. But to get started in your soap making, the first thing that I would recommend you to get is, first and foremost, a scale. You can make soap without a thermometer if you're making it at room temperature, but you can't make it without a scale, because everything you need has to be precisely measured. You have to measure with precision on your soap, or you can make soap that's lye heavy, or you can make soap that comes out as mush because you don't have enough lye in your formula. So with that being said, the first thing that you need is a scale. Okay, the next thing that I would recommend you get is molds. Whether your mold is a loaf mold, whether your mold is a single bar mold, whether your mold are different shape molds, whatever kind of mold that suits you, you're gonna need a mold, because once you mix your oils together, and your lye solution together, you're going to have somewhere to put it. So you need a scale and you need a mold. Now, do you need color? It's not mandatory that you have color in your soap. Do you need fragrance? It's not mandatory that you have fragrance in your soap. You can make a plain soap with no fragrance for sensitive skin and still come out with a beautiful bar of soap. But it has to be measured properly. So getting your scale is most important. The next thing you need is a stick blender. One reason why we use a stick blender or an emulsion blender is that it reduces splashing. And when we use this emulsion blender, we're kind of spinning from the bottom of our solution, and you can spin in turn. If anybody ever bakes a cake and you use just a regular mixer on your cake, sometimes you pull it up. If it's still spinning, you have splatters around your cake bowl. So those splatters in the world of soap, though we're making a batter, in the world of soap, those splatters, that is activated lye. That could be going on your skin, getting into your eyes and all of that. And in its raw state, lye is dangerous. Okay, so lye can blind you. That's why when you have your tools, one of your tools that you need when you're making lye is goggles. That's why we tell you to wear goggles. That's why we say wear gloves. That's why we say wear long sleeves. That's why we say wear shoes. So you are protecting yourself. You're protecting your skin. You're protecting others. So when you make your lye solution, remember I told you it has to be, it's going to get up to like 180 degrees. Put it up out of reach of your children, of your pets. Even in a container like this, put it up out of reach. So when you're putting it up out of reach, you're keeping that caustic acid away from, your loved ones. You're keeping it out of reach. And you want to make sure that you keep it in a cool, dry place. Because little do you know, if I shake this, you can hear the flakes in here. But in the wrong environment, this is all will seize and become one mass. Okay? Now, remember, the reason why we don't mix our water to our lye, instead we mix the lye to the water, is for the volcano effect. If you're introducing this to moisture unaware, what are you creating? It might be a slower process, but you're still creating the same kind of effect. Okay? So that being said, when you're handling lye, when you're using lye, whether it's in its raw state, whether it's in that lye solution, guys, please use caution because it is dangerous. Another tool you need, as I just mentioned, is your gloves. A lot of times you'll see me, I wear the gloves that come almost up to my elbows just for the extra layer of protection. So if I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt that day, or if I'm using something, at least I have where the potential for splatter to be is covered by my gloves. Okay, so you have that. Your thermometer, I know you said, I told you that you can make soap without a thermometer, but please, y'all, get your thermometer, okay? I'm not telling you don't get a thermometer. I'm telling you that if you soap at room temperature, by default, you know that your oils and your lye are room temperature. Speaking of room temperature, I'll get into that a little more with you all later. So if you have any questions or anything, please make sure that you put your questions in the comments, and I can actually see them today, y'all. So I'll be able to answer your questions for you. And if there's anything that you all need, as we finish, if you want to send me a private message, I will be able to answer there as well. But if you put your comments next, just let me know if if you're finding this information valuable to you, if this information is helpful to you, if there's anything that you want me to cover. Write it in the comments so that I'll be able to see it on my screen while we're going through. Yeah, so those are some of the basic essentials that you need, the basic tools that you need. You need your thermometer, you need your goggles, you need your scale, you need your gloves, and you also are going to need a mold. So and a spoon, of course, because you want to be able to spoon things out of your mold. Now, when I use a spoon with my lye batter, I personally don't use a metal spoon, and I don't use a wooden spoon. Okay. Using a wooden spoon, lye can eat through that spoon and it can cause like splinters. So I usually use like a silicone spoon or one of those nice hard silicone spatulas whenever I am making soap for my own personal self. Or sometimes I do have a glass wand that I use. I'll use glass as well. So that's that for that. Now, when we're talking about our soap recipes, guys, some of the basics that I want you to know about your recipes. So your recipes, you kind of have two ways you could go at it. You can either follow someone else's recipe or you can create your own recipe. Now, when you're following somebody else's recipe, please make sure that you take that recipe and you run that recipe through a soap calculator. Don't just follow somebody else's recipe and say, oh, willy-nilly just because. Because you don't know if they've given that soap a lie discount. You don't know if they have a heavy super fat on that soap. You don't know what's going on with that batch that you probably have not seen. So if you're just taking raw numbers and just going at it, you could be creating a product that at the end you don't know what it is. You don't know if it's safe. You don't know if it's not safe. You don't know if it's too harsh where it's not going to be moisturizing. So it might get you clean, but are you going to be moisturized? So those kind of things, those are things that you want to think about when you're using somebody else's recipes. As a rule of thumb, if you're using someone else's recipe, make sure that you always run it through a soap calculator and you check it. You have many different soap calculators out there. The one that I personally use is soapcalc.net. I love soapcalc.net. I think that is very comprehensive. It breaks down so many things on so many levels, and you can see various components of your soap, as well as when you're looking at factors like your hardness, your conditioning, your moisturizing, things like that. It tells you different ranges that your soap should be in. I love that feature of Soap Calc, but again, whatever soap calculator you use to benefit yourself and your soap making journey, whatever is most comprehensive to you, use it. Just make sure that you use it and you're understanding it. Okay. The second option you have with your recipes is creating your own recipe. Now, here's a couple things I want to tell you about your own recipe, because again, we all have different oils that we can use. There is no one set in stone. But what you want to know about your recipe is if you decide to go it on your own with your own recipe, just make sure that you have a recipe that is going to be moisturizing. Again, that's where your olive oil come in at. Your soap is going to be cleansing. That's where your coconut oil comes in at. You have a soap that's going to give you hardness to your bar. So you want to make sure that you have cleansing, moisturizing, and hardness. Okay, you also want to make sure that you're using oils, a combination of oils that's going to really give you a good lather, because you can have a soap base, but if your soap doesn't have certain components to it, then you may come out with a bar that's too soft. You may come out to a bar that's too caustic. You may come out to a bar that is too drying. And that's why a lot of times of us artisan soap makers, that's a lot of times why we make soap in the first place, because when we get soap that is commercially made, these soaps, they focus on cleansing, but they don't focus on moisturizing and hydrating, because you're using a whole lot of synthetics. When you're talking commercial soap, they're making big masses of soap. It's not one-on-one like we do it, where you know what's inside of your product. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you talking about your soap and your soap recipes, especially if you're doing your own recipes. Now, for some of you also, I've been asked the question, Curlinda, what is trace? So when we are working with soap and you have your soap batter, in simple terms, trace is the complete emulsion of your lye solution and your oils. If you've ever made soap before, you notice whenever you pour your lye solution into your oils, there's a reaction that instantly takes place. And this reaction makes your oil starts to turn cloudy. Well, the soap process is taking place right away. Okay, so whenever you take your stick blender or your emulsion blender and you emulsify those oils and that lye solution together, then that begins to trace where it goes from two separate products to a one cohesive product, where now that they're combined, you can't take them apart. Okay, so now everything is completely 100% emulsified all together. When you reach trace, it's like if you take your stick blender up out of your lye and oil solution that you've now combined together completely. If you take your stick blender, or if you have a spoon and you like make a drizzle on the top, it should create a trail for you. That is trace. Now, we have light trace or thin trace. Thin trace is very, very thin, where it's very faint, you can barely see it. A lot of times we're using thin trace when we're making very intricate designs or pours and stuff like that. We'll use a thin trace for that. Or if we want to separate, add colors, add fragrance oil, and then continue the process of mixing, we'll use a thin trace to start that process. Then you have like a medium trace. Your medium trace is more like, I like to call it like making pudding, where your medium trace, if you pick up that same spoon or that same emulsion blender and you put it on the top, those trails are more defined, they're more distinct, they almost like sit on top of your batter. You know, if they sink back down in, it's a very slow process. That is a medium trace. Okay, a lot of times when we're using medium traces, is like if we're doing an in the pot swirl or something like that, where our swirls, we want everything to be defined and pourable, but we want to kind of, it's almost like a one pot process. That's our medium trace. And then obviously a heavy trace is where it's like really thick. You're not trying to do swirls, you're really not trying to do anything except for just pour. Okay, so that's your trace, and that's what your different fragrances of or your different variations of trace are. So you have your light trace, you have your medium trace, and then you have your thick trace. So a lot of times if you've watched my videos, you'll see that a lot of times I soap, and I'm usually at somewhere around like between a light and a medium trace, because a lot of times I'm doing swirls or I'm pouring or whatever I'm doing. I need to be able to work with my batter. So that's why you all see me do that. Fragrance. You know, the question becomes, do I need to put fragrance inside of my soap? No, it's not mandatory. And what's the difference between fragrance oil and essential oil? Well, your fragrance oils are basically a blend, a synthetic blend of oils to create a smell. Your essential oils are more or less a derivative of like the plant or something like that. Your essential oils have been extracted. That's why your essential oils a lot of times are more potent, and you need less of an essential oil than you do a fragrance oil, because it's coming right from the plant. You know, sometimes your essential oil can be derived from the leaves or from the stems or from the root of your plant. It's different parts of the plant that your essential oils might have come from to give them their strength, their qualities, different factors. And I'm really not going to dive deep into that, because that could take us way to another area. But just know the difference. Your essential oils are a plant derivative. Your fragrance oils are more or less processed. Somebody processed it in a plant to create, you know, a blend of oils, a blend of fragrances, and different things like that. Like when you think about fragrances like musk. Musk used to be an essential oil, right? But now musk is prohibited. They can't extract the musk like they used to. So now musk is a created fragrance oil instead of an essential oil. Okay, some of our fragrant oils like ozone. You know, how do you make ozone? What is ozone? So somebody somewhere created a smell that gives us a sensory experience like ozone, or like the smell of water coming off the ocean or something like that. So that just gives you an idea between the two, the difference in your essential oils and your fragrance oils. Um, Color. Do you have to use color in your soap? You know, I just mentioned to you, no, you don't. Okay, when you're talking about colors in your soap, your colors can be pigments, your color can be micas, your colors can be, you know, natural colors where you're using plants or clays, different things like that. So when you find your voice and your niche, if you're creating botanical type soaps, you know, you might want to use different colors that are coming from plants because you want that more earthy, natural, botanical type feel to your soap. But if you're making a more playful, artisan type soap, you might be a person who uses your micas and everything with your soap, and different things like that. So depending on what type of soap you're making, depending on what kind of coloring you use, if any coloring at all, you know, we have our oxides. So we have like our titanium dioxide that we have. We have our activated charcoal if we want to make black. Different things that we have like that that we put into our soaps that create colorings. Okay. Now, one tip that I really want to let you all know when it comes to your soap and your soap making. Guys, when you mix your oils and your water together, or your lye solution, I should say, when you mix your oils and your lye solution together, please make sure that you're ready to make your soap because the reaction starts right away. Okay, the reaction is going to start, and even if you don't totally 100% mix your lye solution and your oils together, that combined, when you pour the two, that's gonna make you a soap mass. So even if you have almost like a glacier floating around in a mass of oil, if you don't work with it, what you have in the middle, say you just go and decide, oh, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to have lunch. You're going to come back to a mass. So whenever you are making your soap batch, make sure that you're ready. You're ready to go ahead and go through the whole process of emulsifying your oils and your lye solution, making sure that everything is well combined and you're ready to pour it into your mold from your mixing bowl, or you will have that mixture that has that mass for you if you just leave it sitting. It's still gonna do its thing if you leave it sitting. And also, when you pour your mixtures into your molds, some people ask me, why do I have these holes in my soap? Well, when you pour your mixture into your molds, you want to tap your molds on, whether you tap it on your table, whether you have your mold in a pan and you just want to be able to tap that a little bit. You want to be able to tap it so that you tap out the air bubbles, and your air bubbles will basically float to the top, or you tap them out and they'll come to the top. If not, that's what makes those holes inside your soap. You not tapping out you're not tapping out your mold once you pour, because that's air that's coming to your batter that it's still there. It's kind of trapped in the batter, but when you tap it, you help it to rise up to the top. Um, and also, whenever you are working with your soap, another thing that you want to consider is your temperature. So I get this question a lot. Curlinda, what temperature should I soap at? Well, it's not as easy as you think to come up with that answer, because it kind of depends on what soaps you're soaping at. I know some people, they get the soap and they're like, what are these spots in my soap? Well, those are stearic acid spots, because or palmatic acid spots, depending on how much of the solid oils you're using in your soap, depends on if you should soap at a higher temperature or not, to reduce those oils from basically coming semi-solid whenever you pour at a lower temperature. And those are oils that are grabbing onto your molecules within your lye solution, and that's why you're having those spots in the end results of your soap. So whenever you have those kind of soaps that have those oils and you soap at a higher temperature, you reduce those spots from happening. Now, on the other hand, if you have a soap, and I'm going to get into this a little more, but I just want to kind of open the door for it. If you have a soap that has a high lye concentration, you want to soap at a temperature that's not going to have it where everything is activating so fast. So then I will tell you, well, soap at a lower temperature. And once I get into your lye concentrations, I hope that you'll be able to distinguish the difference of these different solution temperatures and where you should, have your soap. So as a rule of thumb, what I do tell people based on your recipe is where you're going to find your fine median of your soaping temperature. But also, once you pour, you want to ensure that when you pour and you have your soap in your mold, that you properly insulate your soap in your mold so that this insulation will prevent your soap temperature from fluctuating so much while it's going through the saponification process and while it's going through that initial cure in that mold. So by wrapping that soap with a towel, by covering the soap if the soap has, like some of the soap boxes come with a lid, by insulating maybe with a blanket overnight. Some people even take theirs and refrigerate it for a couple days. Some people take theirs and put it in the oven. They'll turn the oven on to 170 degrees. Once they finish making their soap, they'll turn the oven off, leave the soap in the oven with the light on overnight, get up in the morning, turn the light off, and allow the soap just to sit there until everything comes to room temperature. So there again, it's not one of those, okay, this is just a cut and dry set method of how to do this. No, based on your recipe, you want to know what temperature that you're soaping at, and it's your recipe and also your lye concentrations in that recipe, what you're doing with the recipe, and then you take that recipe and you kind of work from there. And your installation process as to when your soap goes through its initial cure of its saponification, for you to understand that you want to keep the temperature regulated. That being said, I've had people ask me, but Curlinda, when I make my soap and I put fragrance in my soap does this ricing thing. I had my temperatures and everything right, so I don't understand why my soap was ricing. Well, a short answer to that is the reason why you probably experience ricing is because the fragrance oil that you use to put in your soap, that fragrance oil has bound to some of your solid oils, like your palm oil, your coconut oil, the shea butter, those hard oils that you have in there. Those soap fragrances, they bind to it and they kind of form like little rice pebbles. A lot of times this happens because those are oil that you use might have been formulated in a soap. That oil could have been formulated in a hot process soap. So that fragrance oil was not necessarily formulated to be used in a cold process soap. So that may be why you may be experiencing ricing. Also seizing. You may put your fragrance in and it causes the whole batch to seize. Sometimes, though those oils have been formulated to be used in soap, those oils could have been formulated using the hot process soap method. So when you put it in your cold process soap, and that's a big difference in temperature, it causes something funky to happen in your soap. Is this always 100%? No, but a lot of times this is the culprit behind. So you want to make sure that your oils that you're using are not only formulated for soap, but if by all means see if they were formulated for cold process soap, if that is the method that you are using to make your soap. Because I've had soap, y'all, where I use a fragrance, my batter was going very, very well, and I poured in that fragrance. And when I poured in that fragrance, guess what wound up happening? My whole batch seized. And with that whole batch seizing, it's like I had to hurry up and kind of put it into my mold so that I wouldn't waste all of my material. And it came out looking like almost like a hot process soap in the end because of the texture. But it came out looking kind of like bread. if you will. I do have a video of that on my YouTube channel. One of the very first videos that I posted on my YouTube channel, YorelNaturals. If y'all want to go and look at it on YouTube and see exactly what happened, I never took the video down, and it's called Epic Seas. So if you see that Epic Seas, I was sent some fragrance oil, and someone asked me to try the oil. And in trying the oil, when I put that oil in my cold process, honey, it was over, done, finished. Okay, it was really much that I could do. So as a rule of thumb for me, one thing that I do, especially when I'm trying a new fragrance oil, I don't pour it into my whole batch. I will take a portion of my batch to put my fragrance oil in. So a lot of times, if something funky happens, I have not ruined my entire batch of soap. So that's just the way I do it. You know, if it's something that you want to do and you try right ahead. But that's how I kind of implement preventative measures for myself. So in a worst case scenario, if something happens, then I'm not like weeping and crying like I did on the Epic Seas video. Okay. Also, with your soap, I know for us, we get so excited when we have our soap, and it's like, oh my goodness, I want to take it out now. Guys, let your soap stay in the mold for 24 hours so that once you are molded, you can really see, you know, what your soap formula does, okay? And then you want to allow it to cure for 4 to 6 weeks so that you have your cure time where you know that your soap is totally dehydrated out. So, you know, and with your soap, guys, soaps can be very intricate or soaps can be very, you know, plain Jane. No matter where you find your space in the soap community, all soaps are beautiful. You know, you can just take a regular flat top soap and sprinkle some lavender buds down, and it's a beautiful soap. You could take your flat top soap and texture it with a fork or texture it with a spoon and put some mica on the top. Or you might be a person that says, I'm gonna pipe, and then you pipe a soap that looks like a sundae, and everybody's like, you know what, this soap looks too pretty for me to use. Y'all know that's one thing that us soapers hate to hear. Oh, this soap is so beautiful, I can't use it. Use the soap. It's soap. That's why we made it, for you to be able to use it. So if you want to have a Sunday in the shower, have a Sunday in the shower on me. So, but no matter where you are in your soap, and whether your soap is very intricate or extremely basic, you know, I want you to find your way in this soaping community. And if nothing else, find you a recipe that, you know, you can work with while you create and develop your soaping style. You find you a recipe that says, you know what, this is me. Also with your recipes, I get a lot of people who ask me, well, I'm making this type of soap, do I need a new recipe? No, you do not need a new recipe for every soap that you make. Guys, you can have a basic soap recipe and evolve your way out of that recipe, whether it's by additives, whether it's by fragrance oils, whether it's by, you know, you might want to add some powdered milk, whether it's adding herbs or botanicals into it. You can have your base soap recipe and work your way out of it. You do not need to create a whole new formula every single time, okay? You can have a base recipe that you have, and say you want to make a apple cider vinegar soap bar. Well, you can start with your base of oils. If your base of oils is olive oil and coconut oil and maybe a cocoa butter oil, then you may want to add something like a jojoba or oil in there, or almond oil, something that's really going to be beneficial to the hair, right? And instead of using regular distilled water for your soap, you might want to use half and half water, half apple cider vinegar, or just plain apple cider vinegar. That is totally up to you. You know, if you want to add sunflower oil, a lot of people don't realize that the benefits of sunflower oil. Sunflower oil is a really good source of vitamin C in your soaps. I'm sorry, vitamin E in your soaps, especially when you're not using vitamin E as an oil. Sunflower oil is a really good source to get that vitamin E in your oil. You know, canola oil is another one. So you can have like that basic recipe that you start with, and instead of having, you know, 70% olive oil, you can say, well, in my soap, I'm going to have 60% olive oil, and I'm going to add 10% sunflower oil into with my coconut oil and my palm oil or whatever. And now you have another oil. Your base recipe pretty much remained the same. You're just evolving out of that recipe, or you leave it the same. And again, you, instead of using just your distilled water, you can use apple cider vinegar in your lye solution. You know, if you want an aloe based soap, instead of using the distilled water, you can have your aloe vera inside of your lye solution. Base recipes are very cost effective. Base recipes are lifesavers. So every single soap that you're making, you're not going out trying to reinvent the wheel. Okay? KISS. Keep it simple, sweetie. Okay? Keep life simple. Keep your soap recipes simple. Keep it simple. Okay? Which brings me to another point. Lye concentration. I know I told y'all I was going to talk about that before, and I know we're like 44 and a half minutes into this video. So I'm going to try to sum it up for you within the next 15 minutes because I don't want to keep y'all too long. So, lye concentration. People like, Curlinda, what is lye concentration? What does that even mean? Okay, you have lye concentration, then you have super fatting. What does all that mean? All right, so I'm going to help you. Remember I told you your soap needs 3 components: oil, lye, and water, right? That's soap all day. Soap 101, oil, lye, water. If you have those 3 things, you have soap, right? Now, whenever you're talking about lye concentration and things like that with your recipe, here's something that you want to know. So, coming up with your recipe, knowing your lye concentration, step number 1, you want to decide on what your batch size is, okay? How big is this? Do you know your mold? Do you know how many ounces your mold holds? Okay, so that's your batch size, number 1. If you're using different shape molds, do you know how to measure? This is something that I teach in my soap classes. Okay, if you have something, say for example, like this flower shape, and you don't know how much, because this is not a regular mold. You're like, Curlinda, I have my regular mold. I know how much that is, but how do I figure this out? I'm going to tell you an easy way. Put this on a scale. Take one of your cavities, fill your cavity up with water. Multiply the cavity times 6. That's how you'll know how many ounces you need, okay? So you take this, however many ounces one of your soap makes. Look, this is 6 cavities in here. If you're wanting to fill both of the cavities, then you multiply the number times 12. Or multiply your number times 6 times 2. Okay, you're going to be able to get that. So the number 1 thing is knowing your batch size, no matter what size mold that you're using. Also, your lye concentration. Basically, in a nutshell, what you're saying with your lye concentration is, how much lye and how much water am I going to have in this soap? So how strong is my lye solution going to be in this soap? That's what you're asking yourself when it comes to your lye concentration. Now, here's the thing about your lye. Your lye is something that you really don't want to change. I do know some people change their lye in their soap, but for me, I don't change my lye. When I'm making my lye concentration, I change my water. Why? Because the lye is based on the structure of the oils that you're using in your soap batch. Your lye is what's going to cause it to saponify. When you start playing around with that lye so much, you could come out with a soft bar. So personally, that's why I don't move my lye. But I will move my water. So when we're talking about the lye concentration in your recipe, you're deciding what type of oils you want to use. You're going to take these oils and you're going to take your numbers that you're going to plug from your lye concentration, put them in a lye calculator along with your super fat percentage, and that is going to tell you how much exactly water and lye that you need. So for example, with your lye concentration, you have like a minimum that you can do. The minimum is 50-50 split. 50% lye, 50% water. But when you're talking about a 50% lye and a 50% water, you're talking about a low water batch, okay? So when you're dealing with a low water batch, you're wanting to make sure that you have at least that 50-50 split so that your lye and your water can dissolve correctly. Right now, that's like a 1-to-1 ratio almost. One part water, one part lye. Most of us soap in a moderate to medium lye concentration. Probably something you didn't even know that you were doing. So I'm glad I can help you. All right. So when you're talking about a moderate to a medium lye concentration, like Curlinda, what is that? Well, you're talking about a lye solution that's somewhere between 40 and a 30. So when you have like between a 40% and a 30% lye in your lye to water in your solution, you're talking about, that medium to moderate, where your solution, once you mix everything together, is not going to move too fast and it's not going to move too slow either. Now, so let's just say, for example, if we have a 33% lye concentration in our soap, what does that mean? That means that your lye solution has 33% lye and 67% water. So it's almost like a 2-to-1 kind of water relationship to lye, versus the low water where you had 50-50, 50% lye, 50% water. Okay, so when we're talking about a lye concentration, you're somewhere between a 30 and a 40. With that lye concentration being somewhere between a 30 and a 40, you're kind of giving yourself a buffer that you don't have too much. Okay, so, and you're right, Candy, thank you for that. Candy says her lye concentration stays somewhere about a 34%. Absolutely right. I usually have my lye concentration about a 35. There are times where I will concentrate my lye at a 40. That means that I have 40% lye, 60% water. So you see what I'm saying? How like it goes, you fluctuate that number. But with that said, your moderate or medium is not as strong as your low water, and you will have more time to work with your batch. You have more time to work in it. So if you're a person that's wanting to do swirls and intricate designs inside your soap, having your lye concentration at a moderate somewhere or medium somewhere between 30 and 40 gives you a workable batter that's not going to turn into soap or a solid per se really, really fast. Now we also have a high water solution as well. A high water solution is almost like 3 parts water, 1 part lye. So in a high water solution, a lot of times it's like 25% lye, 75% water. So you see how that's that 3-to-1. Now, on a high water solution in your lye concentration, basically what you're saying is you're going to have more unsaponified oils in your soap. The end result for that could mean that you have soap that is very, very soft. So when you're knowing your difference in your lye concentration and why you're doing what you're doing, are you wanting a bar that's going to set up very fast? So a lot of times, sometimes when people have, and you see that they're making like the rainbow soaps where they have the lines in the soap and the layers, a lot of times you will see that they have a lower water in their batch because they're wanting that soap to solidify faster. Okay, moderate, yes, it's going to solidify, but you got time to work with it. You got time to swirl with it because it's not going to go as fast as the low water batch concentration. But on the high water solution, where you have more water, like a 3-to-1, 3 parts water, 1 part lye, that soap, it will move very, very slow, but it's going to take you longer to reach trace. It's going to take it longer for your bar to cure. It's going to take longer time, like sometime up to 8 weeks, just for you to have it on the cure rack for it to dehydrate. Also, another thing to this as well is that when you're talking about a high water solution, the probability of you losing a lot of your fragrance that you put into your oil is very high, because more water has to go out, and that finished product is going to have more water out of it, so you're going to have less fragrance left, unless you've anchored your fragrance and it has something to bind onto while the soap itself is curing or dehydrated. Also, when you're talking about a high water solution, you know how our soaps ordinarily shrink when they're going through the cure process? Your soap will have very, very obvious shrinkage to it. So when you're using that high water on your lye solution, you might have a bar of soap that shrinks about a half inch to an inch by the time it finishes curing, because that much more water has to come out of that soap before it becomes a finished bar. And again, I usually keep my lye solution somewhere in the moderate range. So when I have my lye solution, I'm working between like a 35 and a 40, because I don't like my soap to shrink too much. I like a nice firm bar of soap, and I want my soap workable. As well as also too, guys, backing up a second on that high water solution. When you have that high water solution on your bars, and we're talking about the shrinkage and everything to that, and your fragrance and all of that, you know, you have to be careful that it's not too soft and you're left with mush. Okay, because that's why some people, they're like, Curlinda, my bar didn't firm up. And when I start checking recipes, I realize a lot of times that is their culprit. So remember, when you're using low water in your soap, that also another good tip for that, where you know your low water, your 50-50 ratio, that you soap at like room temperature. Because remember, I told y'all that whole temperature thing is like, oh, not cut and dry. None of this soap stuff is cookie cutter. But to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, when you soap at the low water and you soap at room temperature, you're soaping where your elements, your lye solution and your oils are not already hot, because you got to remember there's going to be a fast infusion anyway, because it's more lye in the soap, you know. So whenever you're doing that and you're soaping that way, if you soap at room temperature, you give yourself a chance to move without seizing. Okay, um because you have the reduction of heat from the onset, you're giving yourself the opportunity to do that. But that is one of those advanced techniques that when you start getting into soaping, you can kind of understand, you know, why you're doing what you're doing. Where the high water solutions, again, they are used when you want to make like fancy swirls, a whole lot of things like that. You do have a longer time to be able to work with those, and with that, you can soak those at a higher temperature as well. So that's that for that. Now, also, if you notice in my videos, whenever y'all watch my videos, you'll see that a lot of times in my videos I make stuff and I'm doing swirls, or you'll see me do like an in the pot swirl, or different pearls where I'm doing like a hanger swirl or something like that. Well, in my videos, I actually soap moderate. So again, I'm using between 35 and 40. But even though I'm soaping moderate, I still soap at room temperature. Okay. So me soaping at room temperature, I do find that it makes my batter workable longer. As well as when I seal my batch in the end, I reduce soda ash. Okay. So I don't get a lot of the soda ash pigment on the top of my soaps. But on the other hand, if you want to soap at higher temperatures and you're using different recipes, this is where you can play around with your stearic acid or anything like that that's going to make your bars harder. So if you have that high water content in your bar, but you want a nice firm bar, you know, you do have that barrier there, that cushion when you use your stearic acid. The final thing I want to go over with you all is your super fatting. You know, people like, Curlinda, what is super fat? So in a nutshell, basically what super fatting is whenever you factor in your formula in your soap calculator, In your super fat, what you're saying is this is the amount of oils that I want to remain in my soap that is not saponified. But keyword is you've already calculated those oils. You don't pour those oils in the end because you didn't tell the soap calculator that you were putting it in there. Okay, so that will definitely give you a soft bar if you're putting, your super fat. A lot of people will say, well, I super fat at 5% and I put 5% more oils in my soap than I told the soap calculator. No, that's not what super fat is. Super fat is taking a portion of your oils that you have already predictably calculated, measured with precision, put into your recipe, plugged all of these oils into the soap calculator, and you're saying to the soap calculator, I want 5%, 7%, 8%, whatever percent you tell it, of these oils that I have already in my formula not to turn into soap. That's what super fatting is, okay? So super fatting does a couple things for you. Super fatting gives you a buffer. Super fatting gives you a cushion. So when you're talking about the cushion of sorts, if you will, it's just having a little more free oils just running around in that soap that's saying we are going to be moisturizing. So say, for example, you super fat your soap, but you accidentally mismeasured. So you were supposed to have 4 ounces of lye in your oil mixture, but you wound up with 4.1 ounces of lye in your oil mixture. That little bit of cushion that you have allows you to be able that though you mismeasured a little bit, you're not creating a caustic soap or a soap that could be deadly or a soap that could be dangerous or something like that, a soap that could be drying essentially, because you have that buffer where those free oils, you kind of built them into your soap to give yourself a cushion. Also, it makes it where your soap is going to get you clean, but yet your soap is still conditioning at the same time. A next benefit of your super fatting is just giving yourself those emollients that when we create soap, the way that soap process, another part of the science is cleans us, is it turns those dirt, grime, free radicals on our skin into a water soluble product that we can wash away when we take a shower or we're taking a bath. So basically your soap, whenever you're giving yourself that buffer with your super fat, you're saying, though I'm washing the grime off of my skin, though I'm washing the dirt off of my skin, though I'm washing the unwatered oils off of my skin, I'm still leaving enough oils of my natural oils on my skin for my skin to still be conditioning. This soap is a conditioning bar. This soap is a hydrating bar. This soap is a moisturizing bar. So that's how your super fatting comes to play inside of your soap. And I hope that you all understand that now, and not that it's additional oils that you're putting in your soap in addition to what you're putting in the soap calculator. Because some of you are like, Curlinda, I don't understand why my bar won't get hard. Because you're putting too much oil in it that you're not telling your soap calculator. So hopefully now that you know this little tidbit of information, you can fix that and you'll be able to see the difference in your soap. So there you go, guys. Now you know, like, all of these elements of your soap, your batch size, your super fat, your oils, and all these things and what they mean. Now I hope that you're equipped and empowered to be able to make a bar of soap that is to your liking. Start researching your oils. I will do another live on oils, but in the meantime, start researching your oils so that you can learn the benefits of your oils and what your oils do for you and how your oils can help you in your soap, so that when you're plugging your oils, no matter what they are, into the soap calculator, you're understanding that I'm wanting a moisturizing, conditioning, cleansing, yet skin loving bar of soap that's going to get me from point A to point B of where I want to be in my soap journey. All right, so again, you're going to, use your soap calculator. When you use your soap calculator, you plug in your oils, you plug in what you want for your lye concentration, you plug that in. It will tell you whether you're using grams, whether you're using ounces, whether you're using pounds. Your soap calculator will tell you the amount of oil that I'm sorry, the amount of lye that you need in your batch, and the amount of water that you need in your batch based on your oil numbers. Which is also important for you to choose your oils. And when you're choosing your oils, know to plug your oils in a percentage format, so that no matter whether you're making 1 pound of oil, or 1 pound of soap, or 1,000 pounds of soap, if you know your formula in percentages, you're able to plug those percentages in. You're able to put the amount of soap that you're wanting to make in the soap calculator, and no matter what amount you're making, because you know your percentages, your product is going to stay consistent. It's going to remain the same. And this is very, very important for you, especially if you do wholesale soap making or private label soap making. You want to make sure that what your customer gets today, they can get the same exact thing a year from now. How do you keep up with all of this stuff? Get a pen and paper. Write it down. If you want to use the traditional method, y'all see my book. I have my books. Okay? I have my books where I write everything down in. Okay? Even when I'm going on live, or doing a video, whatever, where it's informative, I write everything down. Okay? Why? If you have that formula, you can go back and look at it. If you don't remember, you can go back and look at it. You can pick it up. If there is a change that you made, you can go back and look at it. You might have your soap formula today that you're using, and for Christmas you want to use it and add something that's more holiday bound. You could go back to that same soap that you made today, and for the holidays, tweak it to what you want it to be, but your base is the same. Guess what? If somebody else wants your soap, that same exact soap next year, you don't have to say, oh man, I don't remember. What did I do? Oh, I can't. You can go back to your book, whether it's a notebook, whether it's an app on your phone, whether it's something that you're putting in a computer, whether you're printing out your recipe cards from Soap Calc or whatever, and you're writing everything down and keeping it in a 3-ring binder. You're able to have yourself set up in a manner that you know your oils, you know your percentages of your oils, you know your lye concentrations on this soap, you know what you plugged into the into your lye calculator to be able to generate your formula for you. And the last thing I want to say to y'all before I go is, when you're plugging in your numbers into the soap calculator, no matter what that batch size is, those numbers will work for you as long as you know them. Okay, in your soap calculator, on the side of your soap calculator, for those of you who use soapcap.net, it tells you all the elements, the features and the benefits of your soap. You can adjust accordingly. And when it comes to your oils, if there's nothing else I can leave with you about your oils, guys, make sure that when you're putting your oils inside of your soaps, that you are putting the right amounts. You can't just take a bottle of oil and dump it into your soap and like, well, I got fragrance oil, it smells good, because the IFRA regulates the maximum level of our skin exposure on our certain fragrance oils that we use. So you want to make sure with those oils that you're using the right amount, depending on your oil. So there again, it's not cut and dry. Should I use 1 ounce? Should I use 2 ounce? No, based on your recipe size, you need to know whether you're using fragrance oil or whether you're using essential oils. A lot of times when you're using those fragrance oils, you want to make sure that you're looking at things like the flash point of the oil, especially if you're making using your fragrance oils and you soap at higher temperatures. Know what your flash points are. If you're making and you're using your fragrance oil, again, you want to know what your maximum skin safe level are. Even if you're looking at recipes that other people have done, kind of see what they've said about the soap. Does the soap seize, or I'm sorry, the fragrance, does the fragrance seize? Does the fragrance cause ricing? Does the fragrance contain vanilla and it's going to make your soap turn brown? Okay. All of those things you want to factor in when you're using your fragrance oils for your soap. And additionally, when it comes to your essential oils, when I use essential oils in my soap, I use between a 3 and a 5% ratio. So depending on the batch size, and whatever blends that I'm making, I usually customize those fragrance oils that I'm blending to make it between 3 and 5% of my batch. Okay, so if I'm using a 2 pound, if I'm making a 2 pound batch of soap, then I'm using somewhere between like 30 and 40 grams of fragrance inside of that soap. Okay, which is like about an ounce, a little over an ounce or something like that, because at the end of the day, when it comes to different essential oils, again, you want to not use too much. But when it comes to your essential oils, you'll find that a lot of times it's your citrus scents that you have to use more of, whether you want that citrus scent to stand out or a citrus scent that you're using in an essential oil that's like a top note in your essential oil, so that once your soap finishes the funification and it finishes the cure, that you can still smell these scents in your finished bar. So guys, I'm going to stop here because we've already run over an hour. I really, really hope this information on soap making fundamentals have been beneficial to you. I hope that it's helped you in some kind of way. Something that I've said can help you in your soap journey, that was an aha moment for you, whether it be your super fatting in your soap, or whether it be your understanding more about the lye concentration, or choosing your oils knowing that you don't have to be stuck. All right. Thank you all so much. I look forward to your comments in the video. I look forward to seeing you all. And if you're watching this video on my YouTube channel, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and share. See you guys in the next video. You are most welcome, Tracy. And thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, guys.